What is up, guys? So that has got to be one of the weirdest introductions I've ever done. If you did like it, let me know in the comments below. If you thought it was totally weird and you never want to see it again, I totally understand. It was quite odd. So anyway, what we're doing today is the Division Beta Performance Review. I was one of the lucky people that got a beta code for this weekend. I've been playing it for around about the past 48 hours. And I've been having a lot of fun. So the specs for my system are listed here. I have an i7-5820K and an EVGA 980 Ti Hybrid Edition card, which is pretty much top of the line. And in terms of the performance I'm getting on the game, you know, it's a really taxing game, especially with all the particle effects and stuff like that going on. It is very pretty, but it is incredibly taxing. Most of the time I was getting around 45 to 60 frames per second, as you can see here, depending on whether I was indoors, outdoors, firing, that kind of thing. So if you are hoping to run this at a mixture of high to ultra settings, you are going to need a 980 Ti for 2560 by 1440 and above. If you're wanting to run this at 4K or 3440 by 1440, at frame rates above 60, you're either going to have to tone down on the image quality, or you're going to have to go for an SLI configuration, which, you know, that's just something you're going to have to do to push out 100 plus frames in this game at the moment. Hopefully that will be sorted by driver optimizations further on down the line, but as for right now, to run this at 4K or above 100 frames at 2560 by 1440, you are going to need an SLI configuration of some kind. We will talk about these settings now. So there are kind of three main areas which I'm going to show you guys. That's going to be the video, graphics, and user interface. So coming into the video settings, you have the option to go full screen, windowed full screen, windowed, and that's basically at full screen. So one of the nice things about coming into this game was having the resolution automatically detected at 3440 by 1440. Now, for any kind of people that have been running ultra-wide monitors in the past, having a AAA game that automatically detects 3440 by 1440 and actually runs it in 3440 by 1440 is a godsend. Like, it's seriously good news. So I've also got the refresh rate here and the monitor. The monitor is actually pretty useful. It allows you to set the primary monitor for the game, so that can either be your primary or secondary monitor, and this is actually a useful function that I have used in the past. So very good to see here. Video settings, no complaints. Coming into the graphics settings, actually we'll go into the user interface. Before we talk about the graphics, we'll talk about the user interface, because this is really where Ubisoft shines. I mean, as far as future support for 21:9 games, like Ubisoft, this is the example that needs to be set, and Ubisoft have set the bar. Basically, whenever I'm going to be reviewing games in the future and I'm reviewing the UI and how flexible and customizable it is, I'll be referring back to the Division, because they've really provided all the tools that you need to really customize this, whether you're running a multi-monitor setup, whether you've got a 34-inch 21:9, 35-inch 21:9, whatever. Like, this is as good as you're going to get, in my opinion, and Ubisoft, thank you so much for taking the time and effort to do this. So coming into the user interface now, you can configure the UI, set this to yes. You've got dual monitor, you can enlarge the text, anchor the UI, so to have it kind of set. You can scale the UI. So coming into these, you've basically got three options for all the available UI elements on the screen. So you can set it horizontally, you can set it horizontally, vertically, and you can also scale it. So for example, the mini map, you can see on the left hand side, you can scale that horizontally, and you can also scale that vertically right there. And you can do that for all the elements on the screen. So you've got your XP bar. I prefer to have the XP bar on the top right hand side, as it's something that I glance at and don't really use that often. You can scale it vertically, and you can also scale how large it is. And this is, you know, doing this kind of stuff would require normally a mod of some sort to get the UI where you want it, and Ubisoft have put this into the game. It's all incredibly easy to use. I've had no problems with it. Thank you again. I'm sorry, but I have to say thank you over and over again, because I appreciate this functionality so much. Coming from a purely ultra-wide experience and using ultra-wide for the past year, having stuff like this makes life so much easier, so much easier. So you've got the chat panel there, you can move that around, and the group panel as well, which is on the right hand side. I didn't really use that too much because I have no friends and didn't group with anyone. So you can do that there. The next lot of options that I'll show you guys is the graphics quality. So these are basically the settings that all the in-game footage that you've seen. These are the settings that I've used. So we'll go through these settings now, just so you guys get an idea of what you're going to be in for if you do buy the game. So VSync, obviously turn that off. The frame rate limit, turn that off as well. The shadow quality, the shadows did have a performance impact, not a huge performance impact. They do go up to you know, NVIDIA PCSS, which is really taxing, so I turned that down. They generally tend to go up to high as well, so I've left them all on high. So you've got the shadow quality, resolution, shadow count, and spot shadow resolution. So when you're coming into the game, you can basically come and fiddle with these and really kind of get the frame rates that you want to get, and compromises to the visual quality as well. So you've also got contact shadows or high. You've got post-effects AA, so this is SMAA, which is a pretty good anti-aliasing. It stays at 1x SMAA, and you've basically got high, medium, and low settings. I just had this at low, just because really I'm not too sensitive to all the jaggies and stuff like that, which is a blessing for me, but for some people they really do notice it. So you can kind of fiddle with this depending on what you'd like to do. The temporal AA, you can get super sampling and standard or stabilization. I had this set as stabilization because it did have quite a big performance hit in game. Sharpen image, left that to 50%. If you over sharpen the image, then it just tends to look really not natural at all, so I left it at 50%. Particle detail, because I'm running a NVIDIA card. I'm not sure if this is proprietary to NVIDIA or what kind of technology they're using here, but it was pretty good. Wind effect is snow, so you saw that before. It is, so if we go back here, the snow is actually quite pretty, and it does add to the atmosphere, so you can kind of see it's following wind patterns and stuff like that. So you can see the smoke is blowing over in that direction, and that seems to be where the snow is falling. Volumetric fog, left that to high. Reflection quality, so set the rendering frequency and resolution for global scene reflections. Left it to medium. You just basically have to play around and find what works best with you. Subsurface scattering, I left it to off. That actually had quite a bit of a performance hit on the frames, so I left that to off, and I didn't really notice any kind of diminishing effect on the visual quality of the game. So that's something I like to have off. All the rest I left to high. So we've got parallax mapping, provides textures with a sense of depth without additional geometry, ambient occlusion, depth of field, object detail, and extra streaming distance. I did tweak these because you're around buildings and stuff like that. I didn't really find having a huge streaming distance or field of view. I brought that down to 70 because that did help the frames a little bit. And to be honest, this is a really taxing game as well, so you do kind of want to hone in on everything and tighten it up, so you do get, you know, between 45 and 60 frames. Like, it was still a really enjoyable experience. I didn't really notice any negative impact of having, you know, around 45-50 frames. It still felt pretty smooth, and I'm not even on a G-Sync panel, so obviously it wasn't ideal, but you know, it's still very playable, and I still really enjoyed the time with the game. So you've also got Chromatic Aberration, which looks terrible, so I turned that off. Lens flare and vignette. I do like the lens flare as well, so I left that on. I did have that off for a while. It didn't actually mess with the performance at all, so I turned it back on. And the vignette, again, I left it off just because I don't really like the vignette. That's basically it for the graphics options. You also have visuals as well. That's more personal preference, so you can mess around with the HUD even more. But it's nice to have these options. There's a lot of customizability within these as well. Then you've got audio. There's no master volume, but you can tweak it depending on exactly what you'd like to do. Language, you've got English, French, Italian, Dutch, Spanish. Not going to comment on that one. And English. And that pretty much wraps up this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you weren't weirded out too much by the introduction, but do let me know your feedback below. If you want to see more hardware reviews or anything like that, or computer science related stuff, I've got a whole shipment of Logitech products in to review, and I have a couple of coding things in the works as well. So subscribe if you want to see more content, and thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.